The first light of dawn spilled like honey over the tired plains, brushing the wooden fences and dust-covered wagons with a quiet gold that felt almost forgiving. The horizon rested in a hush, painted with soft rose and fading indigo, as if the world itself was breathing slow and careful, afraid to disturb a sorrow that had settled there long before the sun knew how to rise. And down that lonely stretch of earth walked Mercy, her boots worn thin by roads that never promised kindness, her shawl holding together a heart that had been told too many times it was not worth warmth. They had whispered her name like it was something shameful, a burden to be passed along and eventually abandoned. When the first man, the one who swore loyalty beneath lantern light, turned his back and called her fragile, unfit, too much trouble for a decent life, the town did not question him. They nodded with tired understanding, as though broken women were a familiar echo in the valley. Mercy never raised her voice. She endured with the soft resilience of dry grass that bends in the storm but refuses to vanish. And then there was Jack, 34 years carved into his face with quiet storms and silent evenings. A cowboy known not for loud laughter or reckless charm, but for the way his presence calmed the air, like the hush that follows rain. He had seen her that evening by the edge of the trading post, her hands trembling around a small bundle of belongings, her eyes lowered as though shame had taken root in her lashes. The others had looked away. Jack did not. He watched her the way one watches a wounded bird, not with pity that stings, but with patience that soothes. There was no rush in his step when he walked toward her, no judgment in the softness of his gaze, only a gentle offer resting behind his silence, as if he understood that sometimes love begins not in grand gestures, but in simply being seen. "You can stay at my place," he said, low and steady, like wind brushing dry leaves, "just until you find your footing." Mercy looked up then, her eyes wide with disbelief and timid gratitude. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and followed him through fields that whispered forgotten prayers to the sky. Days turned into quiet moments, and quiet moments turned into small rituals. The way he left coffee warm by the window before dawn. The way she mended his worn shirts with careful fingers. The air between them filled with a gentle language neither dared to name, but both began to understand. Side by side they moved through life like two lonely rivers learning to flow as one stream. Old Mrs. Harlan from down the road noticed it first. The calm in Mercy's walk, the steady grace in her smile. And she whispered to the girls in town, "See how kindness heals even the tiredest soul." Young Eli, the stable boy, often peeked around the fence watching Jack guide Mercy through the ways of the ranch, the horses bowing their proud heads, as if they too wished to protect her. There was no rush in Jack's teachings, only patience, understanding, and the unspoken promise that no harm would touch her again under his roof. But Mercy carried her past like a phantom shadow. In quiet evenings, when the moon spilled pale silver over the floorboards, she would sit by the hearth and trace invisible lines upon the wood, remembering the harsh words, the lonely nights, the doors closed upon her trembling knuckles. Jack never asked her to speak. He simply sat nearby, present, steady, a quiet sanctuary in human form. And over time, something began to soften inside her. He never called her fragile, never treated her like a burden. In his silence lived respect, and in his eyes bloomed something unspoken and sacred. One evening, as soft rain whispered against the roof like memories seeking forgiveness, Mercy stood by the window. The world outside blurred by falling tears from the restless sky. Jack watched her silhouette against the dim glow, the subtle curve of strength and sorrow woven together in her being. "You all right?" he murmured. She nodded, but her eyes glistened like morning dew on broken petals. "I have never known a place that did not try to break me," she said softly. "Your home feels different, feels safe." His chest tightened at her words. He stepped closer, not intruding, only closing the space destiny had been shaping all along. The air between them held warmth heavy with meaning, like the pause before a heartbeat finds its truth. "Mercy," he began, then fell silent, as though choosing every word from the marrow of his soul. "When everyone turned you away, I thought I was only offering shelter, only a quiet corner for you to heal. But somewhere along the way, I realized you brought more than light into this house. You brought life. Something I never thought I deserved. A reason to believe again. You gave me a family I never knew could exist. She looked at him then, her breath held in fragile silence. His voice deepened like a confession whispered to the heavens. I don't just care for you, Mercy. I love you in a way that feels older than this land, deeper than my scars. And I cannot pretend otherwise. Her lips quivered, tears blurring the world into a gentle shimmer. Emotion rose in her chest like a tide of long-held solitude finally meeting the shore of belonging. Jack, she breathed, voice trembling with amazed disbelief. No one ever chose me when the road grew hard. No one ever spoke love to me without expecting something in return. He lifted her trembling hand and held it as though it were something sacred. I choose you because you are brave, because you stood through storms that should have shattered you and still offered kindness to the world. Because your presence patched all the broken corners of my life. Her tears fell freely now, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming realization that love did not always arrive as thunder. Sometimes it came as soft rain that healed silent wounds. She stepped closer, her forehead resting gently against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm that mirrored her own fragile heartbeat. I never thought I would belong somewhere again, she whispered. Or to someone. You belong here, Mercy. With me. Not as a burden, but as the heart of this home. Outside the storm softened, as if even the sky bowed to this sacred moment, and the ranch rested in quiet blessing. Before you ride off, tell me where in the wide world you're watching from.